showed up. But marauding nomads weren't the only threat. Han emperors had other dangerous enemies inside their own borders. Powerful nobles who commanded their own armies. Potential rivals to the imperial throne. Another reason for tomb towns. The emperor always chose a powerful aristocrat to oversee the building of his tomb. An honor no one could refuse, even though it meant leaving home to live in a tomb town. In return, the tomb town was excused from paying taxes. But the emperor got the best of the bargain by separating rivals from their power base at home.
By moving these local strongmen close to the capital, the emperor could control them. The local lords lost their power, and the emperor's power grew.
The size of imperial Han tombs hints at magnificent burials inside. But that's something we may never know, because no archaeologist has ever excavated a Han emperor's tomb.
These are great ancestors of the Chinese people. Is it right and proper to get into and to excavate and to find out more when they should, in fact, be left as they would have wished themselves, in peace, in perpetuity? Well, this is a very interesting dilemma.
But archaeologists have opened the tombs of royal Han princes. Inside, they've found an astonishing world, built for an afterlife beyond imagination. Some 850 kilometers from the imperial tombs at Xi'an lies the modern city of Suzhou. During the Han dynasty, this place was ruled by the emperor's relatives. Today, you can visit their tombs, where kings believed their luxurious lives on Earth would continue after death. But to properly enjoy the afterlife, a king needed more than just the perfect tomb. He also needed a magnificent burial suit, made of thousands of pieces of jade, believed to preserve the body forever. Ancient texts hint that during the Han dynasty, alchemists and embalmers tried to keep aristocratic corpses eternally fresh. And at least once, they may have succeeded. In 1971, workers digging a tunnel in the Chinese city of Changsha made one of the most incredible archaeological discoveries of all time. The body of a noblewoman named Xin Jue. Xin Jue had died more than 100 years before the birth of Jesus. But incredibly, her body was so well preserved that Chinese pathologists could autopsy it like a freshly dead corpse. No one can explain how Xin Jue became one of the best preserved mummies ever found. But some believe her tomb builders had engineered her amazing preservation. Dead bodies decay faster when they're exposed to air and water in the grave. But Xin Jue's embalmers buried her in a tomb 20 meters deep, wrapped her body tightly in 20 layers of silk, sealed it into 4 nested coffins, each of them sealed with lacquer, and surrounded her wooden burial chamber with 1.5 meters of charcoal and over 1 meter of dense white clay. All that would have kept air and water away from her corpse, proof to some experts that Xin Jue's tomb was purpose-built to preserve her body. But the Han also surrounded tombs with loose stones and gravel. Because air and water weren't the only tomb invaders. In ancient China, grave robbers were the ultimate threat to a happy afterlife. Some tomb builders tried false advertising to keep robbers away. This 2,000-year-old inscription on the Guishan tomb advises would-be thieves not to bother, since the tomb has nothing valuable inside. It didn't work. Guishan was robbed anyway. According to archaeologist Zhang Jianyin, loose stones and gravel were a much better way to foil tomb robbers, simply because the robbers couldn't dig through them.
When robbers tried to dig a hole, the sand and stones would collapse and keep falling down, so they couldn't keep digging. This is a burglar-proof method.
But that wasn't the only way the Han discouraged tomb robbers. This army of clay soldiers, found in a Han general's tomb, is striking evidence of a downsized afterlife. These troops were doll-sized compared to the first emperor's life-size terracotta army. And their weapons were toys, unlike the real weapons the terracotta warriors held.
What we see here is that the ruling class have learnt a lot about how to be a wise ruler. There was not that degree of wastefulness that we saw in the Qin period.
Han Dynasty tombs cost less money than the first emperor's massive mausoleum. But a grim discovery reveals that Han tomb builders could be just as cruel as the first emperor. Excavators found these iron shackles still clamped to the bones of workers who died building a Han emperor's tomb. Archaeologist Chen Bo shows just how painful they were.
The two round ones are worn on the wrists and are very similar to handcuffs. The one with the long tail was designed to put on a slave's neck. The long tail pushed down against the spine. In this way, slaves were forced to bend down while working. They couldn't stand up straight, so it prevented slaves from escaping.
Through the centuries, there were uprisings at tomb construction sites. It was not unknown for the workers to revolt, to throw stones at officials, to cause damage and to run away.
In 220 AD, after 4 centuries of rule, the Han Dynasty finally collapsed, leaving future emperors to ponder the enduring riddle of building for grandeur while hanging on to power. One dynasty would search the past and find a brilliant solution that still gave emperors glory, while finally ending centuries of suffering. About 600 AD, China emerged from the centuries of political chaos that followed the downfall of the Han. For the next 300 years, the emperors of the Tang dynasty would lead their country to new heights of wealth and sophistication.
During the Tang dynasty, China was the most advanced country in the whole world. It had a thriving capital with more than 1 million people. It was multicultural. People came from all over the world. It was well connected to other parts of Asia and even to Europe via the Silk routes. It was prosperous, it was enlightened, it was advanced.
Enlightened as they were, Tang emperors were well aware of the age-old imperial predicament. Only great tombs guaranteed respect, but expensive tombs that drained the treasury and enslaved the people guaranteed rebellion.
As one Tang emperor said, The people are like water. They can support your ship or they can overturn it and sink it.
Preferring to sail instead of sink, Tang emperors searched for a solution to the problem of tomb building. They found it here, at Baling, the tomb of a Han emperor named Wendi. Appalled by tomb building's huge cost and the terrible suffering it caused, Wendi decreed that his tomb would be different. Baling isn't a huge pit covered with a man-made mound. Instead, Wendi ordered his engineers to tunnel a shaft into a mountain. It was easy, it was cheap, and it found grandeur in nature instead of building it on the backs of slaves.
A great emperor should have a very high and big mound on his tomb. But the problem disappears when it comes to a mountain tomb. The only thing to do is to dig a shaft. Digging a shaft only needs dozens of people, while constructing a mound would need at least tens of thousands of people.
Baling was a revolution in tomb design and an inspiration for the emperors of Tang.
Emperor Wen to the Tang emperors stood out as a wise and enlightened emperor who cared for his people and used common sense in the exercise of his rule.
This is Jiuzhong, a mountain 83 kilometers from modern Xi'an. It's also Jiaoling, the tomb of the Tang Emperor Taizong, who died in 649 AD. Somewhere on this mountain is the shaft leading to Taizong's burial chamber. Today, no one knows where it is. Ancient records say that Taizong's engineers built a plank road up the sheer face of Jiuzhong Mountain so they could dig the emperor's tomb where it could never be found. We can't explore the lost tomb of Emperor Taizong, but we can enter the nearby tomb of his beloved daughter, Changle, who died in 643 AD at the age of 23. Princess Changle went to a Tang-style eternity, significantly downsized from the luxurious afterlives of dynasties past. No life-size armies of clay attended her, only small figurines. And no kitchens, banquet rooms and toilets awaited her. Only paintings of the earthly life she would still enjoy in death.
There were rules about how many figurines could be buried. 50 was 70. And how big figurines could be made. 40 centimeters or 50 centimeters. Different standards applied to different classes of people.
The Tang emperors were well aware that tombs would be robbed. Therefore, they saw that it would be wasteful to inter valuable objects in tombs. This meant that tombs would be less attractive to tomb robbers, remain undisturbed, and for the spirit, there could be an undisturbed afterlife.
Someday in the future, archaeologists may finally open the first emperor's tomb, excavate the vast burial mounds of the Han emperors, and discover the secret mountain chambers of the Tang. If they do, what will they find there? Imperial corpses astonishingly well preserved, treasures beyond imagination, or only what the tomb robbers left behind. That day may never come, but our few tantalizing glimpses of what lies inside these mega tombs of rammed earth and tunneled rock have placed them among the greatest monuments of the ancient world and among ancient China's greatest mysteries.